I'd like to say a few brief words at this Philadelphia convention. We're very honored to have Dr. Clarence Hickman. It's the first time he's ever appeared at an AMICA convention. He's just finished addressing our group, and we've just been delighted to hear him and meet him, see him. I shall now introduce Jim Brady, who was instrumental in getting Dr. Hickman to come to us, and let Jim Brady ask a few questions that I'm sure will be of interest to the club.
Dr. Hickman, your audience really loved you. You got a standing ovation today. You evidently have been in audiences before. Could you tell us what past experience you had talking with groups?
Well, you might be interested to know that I was a professional musician at one time on the stage. So I'm used to audiences. And of course, I've talked before audiences before, the Acoustical Society of America and many organizations I've talked to, so that having an audience doesn't bother me at all.
I understand that you grew up, you're a native Hoosier.
That's right.
And you had as your interest when you grew up the bow and arrow?
Yes, as a boy I shot the bow and arrow, and then in later years I took it up from a scientific point of view, and have made tremendous contributions to the subject of archery and the design and manufacture of bows. In fact, I am in the Hall of Fame, for the National Archery Association, and also for the New York Archery Association. I'm in their Hall of Fame too for my contributions, technical, not so much my ability to shoot, but my technical contributions.
I see. When you were hired with the American Piano Company, Dr. Stoddard had three different things he wanted you to do. Could you elaborate?
Well, he wanted to do three things in particular. There were other things, but he wanted to use an electric motor for driving the music sheet. That was one thing he wanted to do. And the other thing was he wanted to improve the speed with which you could change the pressure in the wind chest. Because as you know, in the Model A AMICA, you had two boards with three pneumatics on it, and depending on which one of those pneumatics or any combination of them you had on would determine the loudness of the piano. If they were all on, that gave you the loudest tone that you could get. But those boards were massive. They weighed, and he wanted to reduce the mass. And the first test that we made, we did reduce them by another system to 1/10, but he wasn't satisfied with that. And then I came up with this idea of this, what I call curtain control, and that reduced the effective mass of those boards to 1,000th of what it was previously.
Mm-hmm. Boy, that's remarkable.
When did
that rocket interest?
You started working for the Aeolian American in 1924?
That wasn't the Aeolian American. At that time it was the American Piano Company, and the Aeolian American came at a later date. That didn't come until after they had gone into the hands of the receiver, and when it was bought back again, they combined the two companies. And then later on, the Aeolian took over the whole business, and the American went out of it entirely. I mean, I had stock in the company, and I was paid off for my stock. But I began working for the American Piano Company in February 1924.
And you worked there until 1929?
I worked there until January the 1st, 1930.
Could you tell us when Dr. Stoddard first invented the AMICA?
Well, it must have been about 1910 or 11, because they said that it took him 18 months to produce it, and the contract, as I understand that he made with the American Piano Company, was dated 1913, and that jibes up with the story I told you about the singing bird, because he speaks of the 13 years that he'd been married, and that marriage took place shortly after he had joined the American Piano Company.
Well, your audience enjoyed your talk so much, and you've been swamped with a lot of books, design, and so forth. What are you going to do if you get letters every week now and phone calls from all over the country wanting to talk to you?
You know, my sister worries about that. She says, it looks to me like you're getting yourself in hot water.
Looks like you're going to come back out of retirement.
I don't know whether I don't think I did tell you. I had an AMICA man come over from Forest Hills, who lives in Long Island. I tried to look him up in the book, and he said it isn't there because he hadn't got his application in time for it to be in that particular book. But he spent 5 hours with me and taped the whole business, and he wants to come back again.
We'll have to find out who he is.
His name is Hurd, I think. Do you remember a new applicant by the name of H-E-R-D? Or I may not have the spelling right, but I think his name is Hurd.
Well, we can check this with the membership secretary. But
I looked in my book and it wasn't in there.
Well, maybe he hasn't. Well, I'd like to ask a question that I found many people surprised with, was your experience with the rocket development, both in World War I and II.
Yes. You see, I was with Dr. Goddard in World War I, and then when World War II came on, I wrote to Dr. Goddard. The war hadn't started yet. I mean, things looked bad, and I wrote him a letter and wanted to know if the military was doing anything about the rockets that we developed for World War I. And he wrote back and said that they weren't. And so I wrote him a letter, and that's all in the Clark University correspondence, because all of my correspondence with Dr. Goddard is in the Goddard Library at Clark University. And I asked him if he had any objection he and Guggenheim had been to Washington and spent a week and couldn't get any interest at all in the rocket business. And I asked him if he had any objection if I tried. And he said he had no objection whatever, and he said, "God bless you." And so I went to see Frank Jewett, who was president of the Bell Laboratories at that time, and he was so impressed with the reports that I gave on our demonstration at Aberdeen that he classified it as confidential and sent it down to Dr. Tolman, who was head of the Ordnance Department in the National Defense Research Committee. And I got a wire from them wanting me to come down and talk it over. And the first thing you know, he'd made me chairman of Section H. Section A, he was in charge of Section A, and I was Section H for Hickman. He had about 5 different people under him, and the letters were selected as the first letter of their name, and I was chairman of Section H.
And then you went on to be head of it all through World War II, and I think it was a real accomplishment.
That is right. And of course, that's what I got the Medal for Merit for, with my contributions.
Well, that's certainly interesting. We're awfully glad to have had you here, and I wish you were going to stay longer with us today. It's been just delightful having you, Dr. Hickman.
Well, it's been a pleasure to me, too, I assure you.